So I look back at my old rat care and I cringe inside because it is quite different to how I care for my rats now. I did have to do a lot of learning as it went along, and I'm still learning because there's still information coming out that can help us improve our care. But I thought I'd share some things that I'd wish I'd known before getting rats, just in case it helps if you are starting your rat care journey or you're thinking of owning rats, just to maybe help you not make some of these mistakes. There was a lot of things that I didn't know. I of course did enough research to know things like rats are social, rats should not live in tanks, and rats can be quite prone to respiratory infections. But beyond that, there wasn't much substance to what I know about rats, so I did have to learn a lot of things as I went along, and there's a couple of things that come to mind that I wish I'd known beforehand. The first thing that I wish I had known, and this one I see quite commonly with people that decide to get rats, is that rats are a long-term commitment beyond the 2-3 year lifespan of the first rats you get. And I was quite tunnel visioned. I always wanted rats. I wanted rats whilst I was at uni, and I got them, and then I didn't really see anything beyond that because I was just so focused on those 2 rats that I got. I wasn't really thinking of getting any more at that point, and that was a bit of a mistake. Luckily, I had done enough research to know that rats are social animals, and I did go ahead and get 2, but I didn't really think much beyond that. So when one out of the blue suddenly passed away at just over a year old, I was then left scrambling, trying to find rats that I could get to on public transport that were ready as soon as possible. So to be honest, I never saw myself still owning them in 7-8 years time. They were very much a pet that I picked because of the short lifespan, because I just wanted a pet at uni. I never imagined it being a long-term commitment, and still owning them all these years later. But that is just the way it goes when it comes to owning rats. Either you rehome them or you keep getting more rats, and it's a continuous thing. And I wish when I did my initial research the term rolling group had come up, which is the concept of getting new rats every 6 months to a year, just in case anything happens to your current rats, instead of waiting until they're 2 years or until they start to pass away, making sure you're getting that company, because rats aren't always going to be available when you need them, and it can be quite stressful. So making sure you're adding new rats into the group before things start to happen. The other thing that I wish I had known is about bedding. I had done enough research to know what beddings were safe or not, and I did start out with back to nature bedding on the bottom, which is quite expensive, and it's not really best for them to dig and forage in. And I had the thinnest little sliver of this on the bottom of the cage, and the cage base I had was actually pretty deep, but I never really filled that very much at all. So I had that bedding, and then I think I switched to cardboard like pieces, and then switched to safe shavings. So I've been on a bit of a journey when it comes to which type of beddings, but it took me a good 2-3 years into owning rats, probably 3 years I'd say, to actually invest in getting a good deep perspex base. Even then I wish with my first one I'd gone a bit deeper, but it took me a long time to actually invest and get that, and actually give my rats an appropriate amount of bedding to dig and forage in. I think there's so much focus in the information out there when you're researching how to care for rats on the safety side of bedding or what beddings to use. There's not always much information about how beneficial it is to give them a big deep layer of bedding, and it is a process. Everyone starts with one cage and then buys a better cage, and then realises you have to spend £50–60 on buying perspex to make that bottom even deeper. So it is a process, everyone goes along that journey, and to be honest, even I wish now that I had gone a bit deeper with my perspex. So that is something that I might consider in the future, just to improve and give them even more bedding to dig in. I wish I had known a lot more about common health issues in rats that aren't just respiratory infections and external tumours like mammary tumours. There are so many other things that rats can experience and go through that I kind of had to learn as I went along, and I didn't really know any of the early signs for them. A lot of care guides and sheets and information do just focus on those two common things and don't really delve into all of the other health issues and illnesses rats can go through. So I wish I'd known a bit more about them and not had to learn as much as I went along, and I could have seen some of the earlier signs in my first couple of rats to notice them. Things like pituitary tumours, or kidney failure or heart failure, or teeth issues like malocclusion. All of these you kind of learn about as you experience them with your rats, but a really good website if you do want to kind of read things before they happen to your rats is a website called Rat Guide. It kind of breaks down all the different illnesses that can happen in rats, the treatment options, the prognosis, things like that. It's a really good website, so I wish I'd known about that before getting them to read up on some of the things that could happen. I wish I had known how to set up my rat cage better. Looking back, especially when I stacked two of the cages on top of each other to make a taller one, at the time I thought, wow, this is great. And looking back, I'm like, there is nothing in that cage. It's very empty. So specifically with these cages and my first kind of bigger cage setups, I look at them now and they need a lot more fall breakers. There was a fair few gaps in the middle that could have been filled with more hammocks or more like IKEA tie holders. I don't think I had experienced them or come across them yet. Maybe I had, I'm not sure. But my cages were quite gappy and this is not safe, so I would have been better off not putting in so many other things and just making sure if they did fall from the top, they're not going to bounce and go completely to the bottom. So I wish I'd known about fall breakers. Nothing happened, luckily, but I wish I had filled my cages a little bit more just to make it safer. The next thing is enrichment. I wish I'd focused a lot more on making sure they had different types of enrichment. My first rats, they definitely had some sort of foraging toy. I think it was a hanging one that you can put vegetables in, and I think I bought them a foraging wheel not too long after I got them, but they didn't really have much variety, and I think for the first year and a half I still fed them in just a food bowl. So I wish I'd known about scatter feeding. That's a really good way to give them enrichment, and I just wish I bought them a couple of more enrichment toys. Luckily, because of my lifestyle back then, their cage door was always open, but I wish they had a little bit more. I wish I had known that not all breeders know what they're doing or are responsible. I had done enough research to know that I shouldn't be getting rats or any pets at that point from Pets at Home or another pet store. So I did the classic thing that I think a lot of rat owners do and just searched rat breeders near me or rat breeders in my area, and came across an advert. It was probably on Pets for Homes or Pre-Loved, and I was like, great. The description sounded really good. They sounded like they knew what they were doing, and I went with them. So looking back, would I choose them again? No, definitely not. But I wouldn't change those rats at all because they were the ones that made me want to continue owning rats. They were the best rats, but there was definitely issues with that whole experience with my first two lots of rats. Looking back, I was quite naive, I was quite young, I was really excited, and I didn't really know what to expect from a rat breeder, so there definitely was some red flags I would walk away from now. One of them being that one of my rats, Rolo, was quite small. He was literally like this big, way too young to be going to a new home, and when you walked in, the smell kind of hit you. It made like your lungs burn and everything, so not great conditions. There was also a lot of adult rats per quite small cages, so you live and you learn with that situation. I'll put a link to a really good description of what to look for in a rat breeder that's ethical and responsible, just in case, because when I got my first rats, had no idea. Something that I didn't really think about, I didn't partake in this at all, probably because we didn't actually have a decent garden at uni, but I didn't really know the importance of not taking rats outside and just letting them run around on the floor. I didn't really think too much of it at the time. Now I do share this information and share that it's not really the best idea because 1, you can lose your rats, 2, predators can quite easily get them, and 3, probably the biggest reason not to is because they can pick up things that wild rats in the area have spread around, so things like leptospirosis. That is a risk and a concern that when I first got my rats I didn't really think of, so I could have easily fallen down that path. If we did have a nice garden that had grass and things, I might have taken my rats outside. I didn't, but I could have because I didn't know better. I wish I had known more about diet and food before getting the rats, because I just went for the most convenient thing that was easy to feed, easy to store, which was just a bag of rat food from the pet store. I did get the higher quality one. I was feeding Science Selective to start with, but sometimes when I went to buy a new bag and I had nothing left, they didn't have that, so I did sometimes have to feed them the Burgess nuggets, which have been allegedly linked to high risk of cancer in rats, and they're just not great quality. So I wish at the time I'd seen information about either making your own mix or buying a mix pre-made, because that's what I do now and it is a lot better. So that information I obviously did not come across at the time before getting rats. I wish I hadn't put so much emphasis and thought into the differences between male and female rats and the stereotype that gets shared online, and I have shared this information as well, that male rats tend to be a lot more calm and cuddly and female rats tend to be a lot more crazy and hyper and fun, because every rat is different. I'd say my first 4 male rats kind of fit into that category. Some of them were a bit more hyper than others, but most of my rats ever since then, most of my male rats, I've had a lot of crazy ones that are super fun, super energetic, but also have no interest in sitting with me until they've literally been on death's door. So I wouldn't have put as much emphasis into choosing males or females based on that, because it's not always true, and I would say not to do that because you might get a surprise. You might get a super affectionate, cuddly female rat or a crazy male one, because every rat is different, and I wouldn't have based my decision too much on that when I decided to get rats to start with. The last one again is something that I didn't pay any mind to because I had no intentions of keeping rats long term, and I didn't think much beyond the first couple of rats that I got, and that is how hard introductions can be when you're trying to introduce new rats. You'd think for a social animal that has to be with other rats that it'd be fairly straightforward. Oh no. So I had researched this and I did know how to do this before doing it. Luckily, because I didn't just put the rats together and hope for the best, I did know the proper methods to do this, but if I'd known how difficult it was going to be over the years dealing with some introductions, having to get rats neutered over and over again, the expense with that, a lot of people don't expect that. That is one of my biggest turn-offs with owning rats, how difficult introductions can be when you absolutely have to do them. I just hate doing them, so I didn't really expect or know much about doing that before getting rats, and I definitely was not prepared for the years of like heartbreak and stress caused by doing introductions, because they are just a lot, unless you're completely lucky and don't have any issues or have female rats that don't cause you as much stress, but it's a lot. But those are just some of the things I wish I'd known before getting rats that would have made my rat keeping journey a lot easier, although I'm definitely one of those people that learns better by just doing them as I go along. But let me know in the comments what kind of mistakes you made with your rats when you first got them, just to make me feel a bit better, and also what things you wish you'd known beforehand, just to help anyone watching this that's either thinking you're owning rats or has just started their rat keeping journey. I hope this video has been helpful and you've learnt a couple of things that might help you not make the same mistakes that I did. But I hope you enjoyed watching this. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!